Any of you ever seen the show Hoarders on TV? It's on A&E, and if you've never seen it or heard of it, it's like this. These people have stuff in their house. And when I say they have stuff in their house, I mean you can't walk through their house because of all their stuff. I mean, some of the folks have stacks and stacks of newspaper going back, well, since, the world was created. And some people have, like, groceries from decades old. Some of them aren't in cans either, and it's nasty. Some people have, like, electronic stuff, like wires and all this stuff. Some people hoard animals. Yeah, that crazy cat lady, turns out she is. Because hoarding is actually a medical condition called hoarding disorder. And so what this show does is it doesn't just make fun of these people. It actually brings in psychologists, psychiatrists, and organization specialists to help these people out, to help them sort of clean out the things in their lives. I think I need to be on that show. Because as I mentioned this past Wednesday, my family and I had decided to move to Bar Lake over here. I didn't say that part. We're moving closer because, that extra 7 minutes is just too far for me. And so in the process, we have to get our house ready to be put on the market, which means that we have to clean it up. And I don't just mean clean it up. I mean clean it out. And I'm a hoarder, it turns out. I hoard all kinds of things. I don't have room in all my drawers for my T-shirts because I have T-shirts dating back from the 80s. I can't put my left arm into them, but they're memories for me. And I am sure that I am not the only guy in here with really old T-shirts because, we hang on. I got T-shirts from my fraternity days in college, national championships in like 1993 that the Tar Heels won, and in 2007 and 2009 it's nice. And I've got like cords coming out of my ears. I've got every kind of cord you need. I don't know what these cords go to anymore, but buddy, I still got the cord. And then there's clothes, the hopeful clothes. I think a lot of us have the hopeful clothes that one day we'll be able to fit into them again. And shoes that, well, you never know when you might need some horrible shoes that, because you're going to walk in the mud or something. So I hang on to these things and, all kinds of memorabilia and things like this. I keep a lot of stuff. And it's not just at home either. In my office today, I found this box. And in this box, it was packed up when I was leaving Pilgrim. And I was looking through it because this afternoon I'm going to be preaching for the installation of their new pastor. And so I opened this box, and here's what I found. I found this cord with a light bulb. Let's see. Oh, here's a CD-ROM. Don't know where that goes. Files. These are good. Let's see. This is for an advertising for the Synod events. Let me find it. I saw it earlier. Synod events from 2009 are in here. Sure, I'll need those later. This, because it's still usable. Some notes that I took. Oh, here's a letter unopened. Here's the 2007 Synod yearbook. That's going to come in handy one day. Here's a picture of Mary Margaret when she was little. Well, that's still okay. Forgot about this. Here's business cards from Pilgrim. I guess I can hand these out this afternoon. Never mind the fact that everything on it except for my name is wrong, but hey, you never know when this stuff might come in handy, right? And so I keep all of these things in special places like this box because one day I might need it again, right? Now, I am not the only hoarder in this room. And the reason I know this is because the church is the most hoardingest organization in the world. without a doubt. My first congregation, Peace Lutheran Church in Gibsonville, North Carolina, I showed up, and it's a really small church, and it has 2 Sunday school rooms. But at the time, it had 0 Sunday school rooms. You know why? Because both of them were storage rooms. And when I say storage rooms, we had every bulletin that dated back to the 1950s. And we had chairs where, like, the weaving had caved in. We had a film strip projector because, you never know when you might need to watch a film strip. The floppy records that came from VBS, you remember those? Yeah, we had a whole collection. All kinds of stuff just stacked this high in both rooms. But it wasn't just my first church. Have you ever been out to our bus shed? There's an oven in there, folks. I don't know when we're going to need an oven, but we got it if we need it. But the truth is, we hang on to these things for a reason. I mean, one is a little practical, but at the end of the day, it's because they're familiar. It's safe. It's comfortable, right? And it's not just stuff that we hang on to either. I mean, the churches are also notorious for hanging on to all kinds of old things, old traditions. I kind of chuckle sometimes. While we're singing hymns, I'll always look down to see, like, when it was produced. And sometimes we'll sing those new hymns. The new hymns came out of the 80s. Because we hang on to things. We hang on to the traditions that our grandparents' held on to. And heaven forbid that we try to tweak them or mess with them or change anything, right? Because we like things the way that they are. It's familiar. It's safe. It's comfortable. Well, turns out that in today's gospel reading, Jesus is doing a little cleaning of his own. It's known as the cleansing of the temple. And this story is in all 4 Gospels, Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John. All 4 of them. But today, we heard John's version of it. And a lot of times when you prepare for sermons, it's important to look at some of the other parallels, the other Gospels, what they have. Turns out that John's Gospel of this story is different than the other 3. Because you see, in the other 3, in Matthew, Mark, and Luke, this story comes at the end of the book, right before the crucifixion. So in some ways, it sort of puts a little understanding of why people were so upset with Jesus, because he had come in and done this. In John's Gospel, if you look in your bulletin this morning, it's in chapter 2. It's at the very beginning. Because the purpose that John had was not to show why Jesus was killed, but instead to set the tone for Jesus' entire ministry. And there's another difference too. In Matthew, Mark, and Luke, Jesus says, "You are making my house into a den of thieves." Or my Father's house into a den of thieves. In this one, he says, "You are making my Father's house into a marketplace." And so usually, and I admit that I am among these, when we talk about these stories and Jesus comes in and cleanses the temple, we're thinking it's because his people are robbing, the money changers were robbing people blind. And in 3 of the Gospels, that's exactly what happens, but not in John's Gospel. John's Gospel is different. Because you see, John's Gospel, he's not cleaning up the way that they're handling business. He's cleaning up the whole idea of the sacrifice itself. And because the reality is, in John's Gospel, there's nothing wrong with what they're doing. They were following the traditions that had been going on in the temple for thousands of years. Because you see, for Jews, they would sacrifice things. If you lie, well, you sacrifice a dove. And, if you say something bad about somebody, well, that might be a pigeon. If you kill somebody, that's a whole bull, And so you would come into the temple, you would buy the animal that you need sacrificed depending on the sin that you had committed, And the money changers would change it from Roman money to temple money. And you would use that money to buy the animal. Then you would carry it into the temple. They would sacrifice it, and then your sin was forgiven. That's the way things were done. And not only was that how it was done, that's what it told them and tells us in the Bible is supposed to happen. But Jesus took exception to this because he said, "You have turned my Father's house into a marketplace." And now that does not mean we should not sell Girl Scout cookies here. Let me make that real clear. Because I'm sure they're coming soon. What he's talking about is the fact that they are missing what the focus is supposed to be. The focus is on their relationship with God, not on their ability to get animals. And you see, all of this sacrifice was coming to an end because the ultimate sacrifice was going to be given, and that was Jesus. And so the reason that John has this at the beginning of his gospel is to show that Jesus came on like there's a new sheriff in town, and things are about to change. Jesus wasn't just cleansing the temple. Jesus was cleansing lives. So it's got to make me wonder, if Jesus came through those doors today, what would he be running out? What would he be chasing off? What would he be whipping us into shape about? What do you think? Could it be some of the traditions that we've held for years? Could it be some of the beliefs that we've had? Could it be some of the things that we've said about groups of people throughout the years? Because, see, here's the reality. Above all, more than laws, Jesus cares about people. And that's where the Jews were getting it wrong, and that's where we're still getting it wrong 2,000 years later. God cares about people. He cares about me. He cares about you. He cares about every person in all of creation. And if we, as God's people, are not caring about people, then we aren't doing it right. And that needs to change. But that's not just what cleanses us here. What happens if Jesus shows up at your house? What's he going to cleanse in your life? What is it that needs to be run out? Is it some resentment that you've been feeling for years? Is it someone that needs to be forgiven? Is it self-loathing? Is it the way you see yourself in the mirror every day? Is it a habit that needs to be broken, that stands in the way between your relationship with God? Is it dishonesty? Is it misery? Is it grief? What is it that God needs to run out of your life? So, my friends, I think maybe it's time for a little spring cleaning, even though it's only 35 degrees this morning. So how do we do it? How do we get these things out of our lives? Well, the first place to start is always the first place to start, and that's with prayer. We pray for God's strength. We pray for God's guidance. We pray to know what needs to be cleansed, and we pray for the will to do it. But after that, it can get a little tricky, as we all know, and I've brought this up in here before, and I'll bring it up in here again. One of the best ways that I personally have found to do this is through coaching. And if you still don't know what that's about, basically it's about this. You have the answers inside yourself already. You know how to change your life. You know what you need to do. Sometimes you just need somebody to help be a sounding board for that. I'm still taking volunteers. So if you want to be that person, come on. I'll fit you into my schedule. We'll sit down and we'll help you through that. Because sometimes with all the stuff that we got to clean up, it can be hard by ourselves. Find a friend. Find somebody to help. The people on Hoarders bring in psychologists and psychiatrists. Maybe you need one of those two. But the truth is, my friends, we all have things in our lives that need to be cleaned out. And we have a God who loves us enough to work with us and make it happen. So what is it? What is it that needs to go in your life? What is it that you need to get rid of? What is it that you have been hanging on to for years and years? What do you think? Maybe it's time to let it go. Amen.